about will earlier, you have to utilize some will, because
Absolutely.
otherwise you just back it, let's just get tingly, and that's going to be the thing we do.
Intent in some place, some. Do you set some kind of a? Gosh, I don't want to use the word goal, but some kind of a place, a state that you're trying to reach,
Hmm. We're
and
not trying to.
or that we're looking for.
Well, okay. There's two kinds. What I would call the true spiritual sex experiences. There's two levels. One is the third eye level, which is very easy. Not easy. Once you've taught yourself to be able to go to the heart, you can move into that level and actually practice what people call sex magic. I call
Okay.
it transformational sex.
Right.
And I gave a couple of simple exercises in the Huffington Post most
Yes.
recent blog. And just make it simple, you can actually imagine this field, that's an energetic field, a magnetic field that you create, and particularly when you're making love and you're really being connected and conscious, you can breathe that in and sort of imagine it rejuvenating you, and in fact, it will have that effect. So that's one magical. The other, which has been practiced forever, I think, is at the moment of orgasm, bringing in an image of something you desire, something you
Absolutely.
want, and sending it out into the universe. So the third eye level is something that I think can be developed and practiced. The full-on transcendental experiences where we lose our sense of any physicality and we kind of merge with the universe, or
Right.
all those I saw God kind of experiences. Um, those, I think we can't go into saying, okay, tonight I'm going to have this transcendent experience.
Right.
They're kind of gifts. You're more likely to have them when you understand how to work with your body, how to connect, how to practice with a partner, and so it's more likely. Most people I know that are writing about spiritual sex, example is Margot, yeah, I'm blanking on her name.
Yeah, and I think you
Well-known
talk
author.
right.
They have had these experiences sometimes early in their life, and they're like, wow, what was that? And then they go about studying it and wanting to find out. I tell a story of my own experience where it actually healed me from a very, very severe medical condition.
Really.
Yeah.
I think that was part of your story,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
that's the one that's later
Exactly.
I tell that story, because I don't want to make people really weirded out in the very beginning.
I understand.
Yeah, that one got quoted by by my good friend,
True.
colleague, Christiane Northrup.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, it's all these possibilities that lead people to wanting to understand it, to create it, to map it. All of these things we try to do, and ultimately, it's a kind of thing that's a lifelong. What I love about it is it doesn't matter what age you are. If you have a partner and the two of you are interested in traveling this way and being seekers in all kinds of ways in your life, it's available to you. You don't have to be, spry and fit. You don't have to have all your plumbing working perfectly. It's lifelong.
So that brings me back to my question with you: was it women who came to you most, which was going to lead to another question, and that is, how do we've got, let's say we have a woman who's come to you and she's been married for quite a while, and she and her husband have this pattern, and how does she even begin to speak with him in terms that attract him to this? I mean,
Well,
that could be.
usually if they've come to an impasse and it's really not working, the best bet is to get into some kind of sex therapy with somebody who's experienced, because there's a lot of people that say they work with sexuality but aren't certified or
Right.
trained.
Right.
And move into it gently, because, hey, honey, I'm really bored with you, and meanwhile, I want to practice spiritual sex. Probably isn't going to fly.
It's probably not going to work, and I may need to find somebody else, sweetheart. So
I know,
yeah,
because
no.
you're not spiritual enough. So,
Right.
What I love to do is teach couples to work with it and to where they are now able to come from their heart center. Not all the time, but
Right.
at times. And then I begin to introduce gently this sort of fascinating other things you can do with your sexual energy. And most of the time, the guys are pretty interested. but
Once you
initially,
catch their attention initially,
yeah.
right?
Well, initially, what they want is to have good sex.
Sure.
And, so we're working with everybody's needs, and I'm well aware that the woman is wanting something, because almost all women really say, I'm missing something. I want something more.
Right.
This, get it on thing isn't working for me. And guys are often really baffled because they're like, well, you had an orgasm. Isn't that enough?
Well, you also talk about, which I think must be a huge problem, about the great lengths that as men will go to, the first time when we meet a woman to get her into sexual intercourse.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then after marriage, it's like we don't expect to have to do that anymore.
Right. I don't want to go through all those hoops anymore.
And it is the hoops that really start to create the desire with the woman. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. There needs to be an enticement. There needs to be a seduction. But what I've done with couples is, because the guys are feeling kind of the burden of that, and I think that's a little unfair.
Yeah, for sure.
But what happens is they start pointing fingers. Okay, it's your turn to initiate. You must initiate, and that's just so unsexy. But together they can kind of collude to create these moments in time, because a lot of times they have to clear the space, get the kids somewhere, whatever it takes.
Right.
And so it's a co-creative process, and that's what I help couples learn to do. So we collude together to make the time and space for this to happen, rather than it's your turn, no, it's your turn. And then for women, often desire follows the sense of connectedness and so on.
Right.
Women will say, I don't feel any interest in sex, and what they're saying is, I don't feel that tingly thing that I used to feel in the beginning of the relationship. And I always tell them, don't worry about that. That will come with touch and with connecting and so on. The intention is what you need. It's intentional sex, really, when you think about it.
Right.
Yeah. So I didn't know Napoleon Hill mentioned it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I had just gotten into the real estate business at the time, and I really utilized that. It was, it worked absolutely well for me. And since then, I've found it in other works, and that energy still works for me today. I can use it in a lot of different,
Yeah,
many.
you can access it. You know where to find it, and you can move the energy. I know, it's really cool. There's
Absolutely.
a couple of interesting books that I have recommended often. One of them is a book called Don Juan and the Art of Sexual Ecstasy, and it's by a woman named Marilyn Kunishende, and she talks about that energy and how to raise it. And it's probably even out of print now, but it's a lovely book, and she's coming from the Nagual Toltec.
Right. So when she's talking about Don Juan, is she talking about the same Don
Juan?
Okay, great, because that was that was one of my teachers. I couldn't hardly wait for the next book to come out in that whole series.
Yeah, they were real popular. And the book isn't about sex with Don Juan.
Right.
I thought it was, but it's certainly not.
Right. No.
But it is that tradition and their views on sexuality. So that's just one example of a completely different paradigm, and that's what I'm interested in, is helping people get out of this very limited, in my opinion, boring paradigm, and move to some really interesting. I mean, my feeling is that the way we view sex in this culture, which is positions and intercourse and all that, is maybe a tenth of what is really possible.
Well, one of the things, Linda, with our audience is we specifically, attract people who are on a spiritual journey, looking to enhance their spirituality. And so for them to be able to find a way to bring their sexuality to play in that, to find those higher places, it's very interesting. We have had a high amount of people who have told us that they through our invitations, they plan to be tuned in this evening, and a great deal of interest has been generated.
Oh, good.
One of the, Linda, one of the things that you talk about, and boy, I think I see this as being a huge problem, and you say that sexuality and self-esteem, low self-esteem, is a big problem in this. And how does that play in your mind? How does self-esteem play, and what do you do about it as far as working with couples?
Okay, so that's about a 5-hour answer. So
let
me give you the short version.
I mean,
self-esteem is at the base of an awful lot of what goes on with people's depression, anxiety, etc. But sexuality is one of those areas where we are most vulnerable. And even men that think they're kind of studly can get very insecure about performance.
Oh, absolutely.
Women, and the book I wrote is directed at women because we come from a less than, the culture sees women's sexuality as less than.
Absolutely.
We don't want it enough. We don't like the way men do it. We don't this, that, and the other. And so for women, it's a whole lot